Where are you from? No, come on, man. Where are you really from? If, like me, you're non-Caucasian, you probably get asked this question from time to time. My usual answer is, I'm originally from New York City, but my home is Los Angeles. Not enough detail for you? Alright. My mother fled Guatemala after many of her friends and family were disappeared during the country's civil war. After an arduous desert crossing, she ended up in New York, where she struggled in menial jobs for years before eventually raising a family and starting her own business. My name's Eric Rivera. I'm a stand-up comedian. I guess you could call me a second-generation Latino, but really, I just feel like an American.
I was born here, and I get dumb. It's hard being Spanish in this country, because people expect you to have some kind of crazy story. Like, I was born here, and people are like, oh, how'd you get here? Did you swim? Did you get smuggled in? And I don't want to let you guys down, so I make up stories now. How'd you get here? I'm like, well, it was Cinco de Mayo. This woman hatched me out of a piñata. I was wearing a sombrero and holding maracas. She rolled me into a tortilla, stuffed me in a cannon, and shot me over the border. It was awesome.
The truth is, almost everyone who lives in this country is originally from somewhere else. From the first pilgrims who came over on the Mayflower in 1620, this country has always been a magnet for successive waves of immigrants. A beacon for tired, poor, huddled masses yearning to be free. But from where I'm standing, it looks like those days could be coming to an end. Today, there's a third-generation immigrant in the White House, a descendant of the Trump family of Germany, who swept to power promising to make life more difficult for people who dream of a better life in America.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
We will build a great wall along the southern border.
The president has also vowed to get tough on immigration, and for many immigrants, their American dream is under threat.
Here to stay! Here to stay!
There are around 800,000 Dreamers in the United States. That's the name given to the undocumented migrants who arrived in the United States when they were young children. Under the so-called DACA legislation brought in by Barack Obama, Dreamers were able to get Social Security numbers and driver's license, go to college, work, buy cars and homes, start businesses. They were not considered a priority to be deported. Many of them have no memory of the countries in which they were born.
Our lives do not have any value whatsoever to them. That is why we stand here in front of you.
But now, Donald Trump wants to repeal the DACA program. In 2018, Dreamers will begin losing their work permits, their places in college, their businesses, their legal right to be in this country. They will start living in fear of deportation. And in Southern California, towering chunks of concrete and steel stand tall against the sky. Prototypes for the wall Donald Trump has promised he will one day extend the full length of the border.
Who loves the idea of the wall?
Trump's rallying cry for a great wall to keep out drugs, rapists, and immigrants have resonated with many Americans, despite fewer migrants arriving now than 10 years ago. I'm heading out of Los Angeles toward the border crossing at San Diego to see for myself what the wall will look like now. Things are not good politically. You know, we've got a president who wants to build a wall across the border. He makes blanketed statements that, you know, people coming over are drug dealers, rapists, criminals. And I don't think he understands the harm he's doing because, you know, there are good people trying to make better lives for themselves, but when you throw a statement like that, a lot of the country sadly agrees with him, and It creates hate. I arrive at a small town right on the border. On the American side, the town is called Jacumba. On the Mexican side is Jacume. Separated by a 15-foot barrier of rusted metal, patrolled by immigration agents in trucks and helicopters, protected by motion sensors, cameras, and sometimes enthusiastic amateurs taking the law into their own hand. Never been here before. First time. You hear about all the controversy with the wall, and some of us live in these bubbles in these cities, and we never get to be here and experience it, and here I am. To smack a reality of what these conditions really are out here, and these people risk their lives to come over, and all they want is better lives, better the lives for their families. And this is our sign, our big welcome mat to them. I've come here to meet Enrique Morones, a man who's devoted his life to helping the migrants who risk their lives on a dangerous trek across the border.
A lot of times it's too late when they find them. They're dead. And sometimes they've even had water next to them, but they were so desperate they didn't want to drink it all, and they died of dehydration. When you die of dehydration, you start kind of going crazy and taking your clothes off and stuff, and you just can't think straight. Your brain is literally fried. Mm-hmm. So it's a different experience for everybody that crosses.
Enrique's organization leaves out water bottles and provisions for people who cross the border. The multi-day trek is full of dangers, not just from the elements and the poisonous animals, but from vigilantes.
So we have shells and bullet castings, and these are people that are out here. Sometimes they're just shooting for target practice, but sometimes we used to have vigilantes out here, and they're still out here, especially now with the era of Trump. He started his campaign attacking me, saying I, as a Mexican, am a rapist and a criminal. I am not a rapist or a criminal.
Enrique believes that making the wall taller won't stop illegal immigration. It'll just increase deaths of people who don't make it.
I think it's important for people to come up here and to realize that there already is a wall. There already is this wall of death, wall of shame, and it's just the wrong message to the rest of the world.
It's distressing for me to think of the men, women, and children who have risked their lives trying to cross this landscape in search of a better life. I'm going to talk to one woman who made that journey decades ago. My mother. Why did you come to the U.S.?
They took my brother-in-law, and they took my brother, and they wanted to disappear them. That one was the reason that I came to this country.
What do you mean disappear them?
Disappear them. In that time, they was throwing students in the Motagua River. That they used to put something in their feet and put cement and used to drop them inside in the river. And my mother, she started crying, and she told me that for her was better that she knows that I was alive in another country than being in my own country.
What were your ideas of what the U.S. was before you got here?
I don't have any idea what United States was. If I can tell you the way that I feel like when you take a cat and you put it in a pillowcase and you go around and around and drop them in the middle of the ocean. That's the way I feel, because I don't know a word in English. I clean bathrooms. When I met your father, he was the only kind person that I met.
How does it make you feel? You know, you had to flee your country because you took a stand for something you believed in. And now you have a son who gets up on stage and says whatever he feels like it. He says his own beliefs on stage.
But now I'm afraid of my son, that whatever is going to happen to him. Because I stand up once for whatever I believe. But now my son is doing the same thing. And I'm afraid that what is going to happen to him.
All right, if I could take you back in time to that day you decided to flee, and you know now who's getting elected and what's happening, would you still make that decision and come here?
Maybe no.
The alternative is in a river or this president?
Maybe in the river. Yeah.
Los Angeles has the largest Latino population of any city in the United States, and there are now more of us in California than there are white people. But under a Trump presidency, there's a renewed sense of nervousness in the community. So everybody's out here chasing a dream, you know? From the guy who's at a coffee shop to people driving around, people walking around, everybody's got some kind of dream and they're here. I think that encompasses what America is. Everybody's chasing a dream. In Los Angeles, it's not hard to find people with Democratic views. California has voted Democrat in the presidential election since 1992, and sometimes this city can be a bit of an echo chamber. But I've come to meet a fellow Latino stand-up comedian who has some quite surprising views when it comes to immigration.
We do have to be honest. I mean, there's a lot of crime committed by Hispanics in America. I don't like saying that out loud, but it's a hard truth that we do need to acknowledge. You know, the United States Sentencing Commission, which keeps stats of all federal crime and who's sentenced, they actually did a study to where about 52% of all federal crime is committed by Hispanic Americans, which bothers me a lot. I mean, we're 18% of the population, we're committing 50% of federal crime. That's a big problem. So yeah, there is merit to that. Now, pretending like it doesn't exist and be like, hey, they're all hardworking and they want to do good. Yeah, I'm sure some, but there's a lot that aren't doing that. And we need to change that within our own culture. Like, I'm demanding, when I say this, other Hispanics get upset, but I'm like, we have to acknowledge this. We have to be honest. We have to be honest because that's the only way we can fix the problem, you know?
Trump's constantly been talking about building the wall. You don't think it's a slap in the face to Latinos that he's building a wall on that border but not the Canadian border?
Well, I mean, you have to address where the problem's coming from. I mean, look, if we had a giant influx of illegal Canadians coming in here, spreading their bad music and stuff, like, yeah, we should build a wall. But it's not. It's really coming in from Mexico. And the problem is because, again, Canada has a social safety net for their people, yes or no? They do. Mexico doesn't. Mexico's social safety net is United States.
You don't think Trump himself has put a target on Mexicans that are in this country by calling them these statements like rapists and criminals and drug dealers?
Well, let's address the worst one, I think, which is, I think we can all agree. I mean, you have to be a complete idiot or lie to yourself to think that drugs don't come from Mexico into the United States. I mean, we can go back to custom seizures and, you know, we can just look at all the data. You know, most of our heroin, most of our crystal meth, most of our marijuana, you know, all legal drugs come in from Mexico. All right, so he's not lying when he says that. They are bringing drugs. That's a fact, right? The biggest one that really offended people was the rapist comment, right? Well, here's the thing that a lot of Mexicans aren't going to say, what I'm about to say. Mexico has a huge problem with underage sex. I don't know if people know this, and this is one thing that a lot of people are like, hey, don't air this dirty laundry because it sounds really gross, but it's a fact. Mexico's sexual age of consent is 12 years old. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Does that shock you?
It does.
You have kids.
It's gross.
Exactly. So this is Mexican law, right? Now, this is a huge problem because it does set something in the culture We look at 18 years old in the United States as like, dude, anything below that, you are a complete pervert. You should be ostracized from society. You should be thrown into prison, which we do. That doesn't happen in Mexico. The age of consent is 12. In some states, the age of consent is when the girl hits puberty. I mean, some women hit puberty when they're 10 years old. I mean, this is a real problem in the culture that people don't want to talk about. I feel like if you're looking to be offended, you're gonna find whatever you want to be offensive. That's why I like debating this topic of immigration with like white liberals, because when they throw like that racist bullet, it, like my brown skin, like it just bounces off me like Superman, like you're a racist, boom, and they're like, oh, what do I do now? You know what I mean? Like, so then now we have to talk about it, you know?
Brian's a passionate guy, and he made me realize there are rational arguments to clamp down on illegal immigration. But I just can't square it with deporting people who have spent their whole lives in America to a country that they can barely remember. That's what Donald Trump and the Republican Party will be doing if they get rid of the DACA program. But for one Republican senator, security has come ahead of compassion.
I think we should have a strong border policy starting right now with President Trump, and I think it's already happened. I think he's hired on a bunch of ICE and a bunch of Border Patrol. We're securing the border better, and I think anybody that comes into the country now, after we've basically drawn a line in the sand and said, you're going to follow the rules just like all of our ancestors did. We see terrorist incidents that happen all over the world. Listen, we have roughly 40 million people that live in the state of California. We have 35% of the people that live in California that are on public assistance. They're in the Medi-Cal program. Now, we've had strong revenues coming into the state. Why? Because we raised taxes over the past number of years. We're spending $50 billion more than we did 7 years ago. So the bottom line is that we can barely afford to take care of the people that are in this state right now. Frankly, we can't afford to take on too much more without a fiscal crisis in the state of California.
The immigration debate is complex, and politicians must weigh competing economic, humanitarian, and security concerns. Both sides can point to studies and statistics that back up their views, but they can't even agree on whether immigration helps or harms the economy. Proponents of more immigration say migrant workers increase the aggregate wealth of Americans. But opponents say that comes with a trade-off. Workers and jobs sought by immigrants lose out.
The issues that we're facing, labor shortages, there's just not enough hands in the area that will help us harvest our strawberries and our vegetables.
Free market economists would say cracking down on immigration will lead to higher wages and more jobs to the native population. This farmer disagrees.
Larger guys are, without a doubt, downsizing because there's just no more migrant workers coming to our area because of the issue of uncertainty whether they're free to move around. They're really afraid to go from one town to another, and because of just that political instability that our beautiful country is going to. So that scares a lot of my people, unfortunately.
The future for some 10 million undocumented migrants in America looks uncertain. At a hardware store in Los Angeles, workers wait for someone who needs help with a building project.
I live here for 11 years, more than 10 years, and then no problem. If you respect the people, everybody to respect you. If you don't respect this country, they deport you.
These are some of the most visible immigrants in society. Because many of them are undocumented, activists say that makes them an easy target for federal immigration officers.
this country was founded upon that belief that we are entitled, right? Or people that were founding fathers of this nation were entitled to being on this land that was of indigenous people. They did not respect treaties, they did not respect agreements, and as a result, we built this nation to what it is today. To tell somebody that they are not welcome here, again, we need to look at ourselves first. One of the things we often said was, we don't need to build a wall, we need to build a mirror so that we can look back and reflect that what do we stand for, how were we founded?
Ivan came to the United States when he was 9 months old. He was one of the first beneficiaries of the DACA program, but he faces deportation if the DACA program is repealed.
I would tell the president, why would you eliminate a program, something that fixed a lot of problems for us, help us provide for our families, without having something in place? And then even if you don't want to look at it from a humane element where you are addressing me as a human being, if you want to look at it from an economical perspective, right? There were so many contributions to the country.
How does it feel after all this selfless work coming home and finding all this hate mail?
It's tough at times, but most recently I've learned that your people are always going to oppose you. Like the Make America Great Again hat, that alone itself, some people have compared it to, let's say, the KKK robes. It's just a hat. But again, we know what it really stands for. We really know why they're wearing it. And he's giving these people a platform who would rather see me, in some cases, dead than having a pathway towards citizenship.
Many undocumented immigrants live their lives in the shadows, but sometimes it's necessary to step into the open and make your voice heard.
This is my nature. The truth in my heart, the breath in my lungs. Yo soy the one you fear, the one that got away. Soy el único que se te fue, the one that grew from your hate and still manages to love you. Yo soy el hijo que nunca será padre, el nieto que nunca será husband. I am the near and the far, of earth and sky, el sol y la luna. Soy everything that is in between. Yo soy de fuego y tierra, de mares que liberan, de muertes silenciosas. Yo soy la muerte que me deseas. I'm of destruction and reparations, of freedom in cages. I'm the bird that still sings praises. Y con todas mis fuerzas te digo que tu odio me libera. Porque más que espíritu enjaulado, yo soy el poder de la conciencia. I myself am an undocumented poet, and for me, the importance of me writing and telling my narrative comes from the fact that I think nobody else can represent it in the best way that I can. I think right now what we're doing is like we're facing a cultural war. Like we're facing a time in which people don't care about facts. Like I can tell you percentages, I can show you data, the statistics of what's happening, and people are still keen on holding on to this idea that we are the enemy. And I think it's hard because we are facing a cultural war. And I think that's what my role is as an artist, is for me to create work that helps empathize and create empathy with communities that don't agree.
On this journey, I've heard strong voices on both sides of the immigration debate, but it's left me with more questions than answers. Questions like, when did America stop being the land of opportunity? When did we get the right to exclude immigrants when we ourselves are their direct descendants? And what are you going to do when recent immigrants become America's principal voting bloc? Illegal immigrants are not parasites. They are men and women who are looking for a way out of poverty and repression, and they're willing to do anything for it. These people should not be marginalized, and increasingly, they're making their voices heard. This is a country where the power of people's opinions can change the government or change the law. By making their voices heard, immigrants are proving that they are truly American. Regardless of whether they show up on the census. I hope the politicians are listening and that they decide to keep the doors open for those who yearn to breathe free.